He wasn't sure if he had been summoned for an honor or a death sentence when the royal messenger arrived, all pomp and grim expression. "The king has gifted you, his daughter," the man announced, as if reading from a grocery list. Gifted. Like a cursed cat or a sack of unpaid taxes. He swallowed and tried to smile, imagining the polite way one accepts a deadly gift. Inside, his brain was screaming. Is she armed? Poisonous? Does she bite, or worse? The palace loomed like a smug, overdecorated beast, and every step toward the throne made his palms sweat in anticipation of meeting this beastly princess. Rumor had it she was hideous beyond comprehension, cursed by some long-forgotten witch to appear monstrous until she found a partner worthy of her wit and humor. He'd always thought worthy meant brave or clever, not clumsy human with bad posture and zero experience with women. The king sat on a golden chair that looked too heavy for mere mortals to lift, wearing a grin that suggested he found the whole situation hilarious. You'll meet her shortly, the king said, eyes twinkling with mischief. She's unique. But perhaps you can tame her. Tame. He couldn't decide if the king was joking, threatening, or casually announcing that he'd been handed a live grenade with teeth. Then the princess appeared. Or tried to. One glance and his stomach lurched as if he'd swallowed a live porcupine. She was spectacularly grotesque. Warts dotted her cheeks like twisted constellations, her hair stood in wild, defiant tufts, and claws glimmered like sharpened silver daggers. She had the sort of teeth that would make dentists faint, and her eyes glowed with unrestrained cunning. He stumbled on his words. Hello. Sounded like a dying frog, which, given the circumstances, seemed accurate. She tilted her head, regarding him with the kind of curiosity usually reserved for humans in a zoo exhibit. Well, she said, voice sharp, dripping with sarcasm, I see the king's sense of humor isn't entirely lost. You look edible. He flinched, unsure if she meant that literally or figuratively. The court snickered. Careful, she added. I bite, and I don't mean metaphorically. Trying to regain dignity, he straightened, only to knock over a tray of soup being carried by a nervous page. The soup wobbled perilously in the air. She hissed, claws twitching, and for a second he wondered if he should bow or run. Dark humor rippled through his thoughts. If I survive this, I'm writing a very specific will. The princess circled him, voice full of playful menace. So you've been sent to tame me? That's ambitious. Brave, too. Or stupid. There's a fine line, you know. He nodded frantically, trying to keep his mouth shut before it betrayed him with an awkward joke or worse, a nervous drool. She leaned close, inhaling exaggeratedly. Smells like fear, and maybe a little desperation. He swallowed hard, mind spinning. Every instinct screamed escape, yet some foolish, stubborn part of him stayed. She continued her verbal assault with sharp, sexual undertones. Do you know what's expected of a tamer? It's more physical than you imagine. He gulped, imagining all the ways a conversation could go horribly wrong. She laughed at his flustered expression, teeth glinting, voice dripping with mischief. Oh, don't blush. I rather like it. The king clapped once, breaking the tension with smug satisfaction. Now let the introduction begin. He realized with horror and fascination that he was the centerpiece of a twisted court comedy. The princess twirled around him, claws retracting ever so slightly, and whispered in a tone both threatening and flirtatious. Try not to embarrass yourself too much. I would hate to ruin your first impression in front of the entire kingdom. As he tried to bow without tripping over himself, the inevitable happened, another spill of soup, another awkward stumble, and a gasp from the court. Somewhere in the back, someone muttered a cruel joke about this being the first of many training exercises. He realized then that he was not merely facing a beastly princess. He was facing the start of a ridiculous, humiliating, and impossibly sexy adventure. The cursed daughter grinned wickedly. Careful, she said, voice dripping with dark humor. I might change my mind and eat you, after dinner. His thoughts screamed, I came for a monster, got a curse, and a potential sexual nightmare. What could possibly go wrong? The moment was inevitable, and of course, it had to involve soup. He flailed, trying to stabilize the tray, but the universe had other plans. A slippery movement, a tragic slip, and the steaming contents of the royal kitchen landed squarely on her monstrous shoulder. He froze, expecting a scream, a swipe of claws, or at the very least, a curse that would turn him into something equally hideous. Instead, something miraculous, or absurdly comical, happened. Smoke curled from her furrows and warts, her claws retracted with a faint snap, and her grotesque features began to melt away as if the palace had installed the world's cruelest, most theatrical beauty filter. The court gasped. The hero's jaw nearly hit the floor. One moment he was staring at a cursed horror straight out of nightmares. The next, a stunningly beautiful woman stood before him, confidence radiating like sunlight, hair cascading perfectly despite the soup, eyes gleaming with mischief and absolute power. He blinked, and she noticed. "Wow!" she purred, voice dripping with amusement. "You stare well. Very dedicated. Or maybe just easily impressed?" He coughed, tried to clear his throat, and failed miserably. His mind raced. "I tamed her? No. She just decided I'm an idiot worthy of observation." She tilted her head, walking around him like a predator inspecting its prey, though the predator had the subtlety of a goddess in heels. "Don't worry," she said, dragging her finger through the air, flicking imaginary soup off his tunic. "I won't bite yet. But I might tease." Her lips curved into that mischievous smile that promised trouble, fun, and very adult complications. He felt heat in places he hoped the floorboards couldn't see. Trying to recover some shred of dignity, he muttered, "I didn't mean to." "Oh, I know," she interrupted, leaning closer so her breath tickled his ear. "I enjoy accidents. They're so revealing." She winked, and he nearly lost all coherent thought, imagining what else she found. "Revealing," the court whispered, laughter and gasps mingling in a symphony of judgment. Dark humor dripped from every corner. A noble muttered, "Well, at least he's brave, or stupid." Another remarked, "That is one expensive mess." He ignored them, trying to focus on breathing and not staring at her perfect, terrifyingly perfect, form. Her teasing escalated. "You look shocked." "That's adorable," she said, circling him again, fingers grazing his shoulder intentionally, deliberately flustering him. "Oh, don't try to act composed. It's cute watching you fail." Every word was laced with double meanings, sexual undertones that made his palms sweat harder than any battle he'd survived. "She's making me blush in front of the entire kingdom." "Brilliant." He fumbled for a response, and she laughed, a low, mischievous sound that sent shivers down his spine. "It's okay," she said, mock sympathy dripping from her voice. "You'll get used to me. Or maybe not. I do tend to dominate conversations, rooms, and occasionally hearts." Another wink. Another spark of panic in his overly imaginative mind. He's supposed to tame her? I can barely tame my own bladder right now. He tried to step back, regain composure, but she blocked him with effortless grace. "Stay," she commanded softly, almost imperceptibly, yet he obeyed like a fool. "I like you flustered. Makes things entertaining." She brushed her hair back, one hand trailing along his chest just enough to make him gasp. He choked internally. "I survived a cursed beast, now I'm caught in an adult comedy nightmare of the highest order." Every word, every glance, every teasing gesture was a test, a playful trap. She had transformed, but her mind remained sharp, merciless, and sexually charged. She leaned close and whispered, "So, beast tamer, do you know how to handle this?" Her hand grazed his arm deliberately, and the court went silent, watching the absurd, erotic tension unfold. He tried to answer, but the words failed him. Instead, he stumbled, blurted something incoherent, and she laughed, full, wicked, intoxicating laughter. He realized with horror and delight that his life had just turned into an adult comedy nightmare where he was both hero and the punchline. She had transformed, but her appetite for mischief and chaos hadn't changed one bit. In fact, it had sharpened, honed like a weapon aimed directly at his dignity. He tried to maintain composure, but every glance she threw his way felt like a calculated trap. She leaned close, eyes glinting with amusement. "I hope you're ready," she murmured, "because training me isn't just about wit. It's physical." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise and innuendo. He swallowed. I think I can manage," he said, voice cracking like a poorly tuned lute. She smirked, circling him like a predator, letting her fingers brush his arm occasionally, deliberate, tantalizing, infuriatingly distracting. "Manage?" she asked, teasing. "Oh, sweet summer fool, you have no idea what's expected of a beast tamer. Or perhaps you do. That would explain the trembling." The absurdity of the situation struck him. He, a nervous human-handed, a formerly monstrous, now breathtakingly gorgeous princess, was supposed to navigate this minefield of sexual tension, verbal sparring, and courtly expectation without turning into a complete disaster. He failed spectacularly. She leaned closer, whispering darkly, "You look funny when you panic. It's charming, in a pathetic sort of way." His ears burned, and his thoughts betrayed him. "She's beautiful, terrifying, and I want her to continue calling me pathetic." They engaged in what could only be described as a test of wills, words, and patience. She teased, flirted, and mocked in equal measure. Every conversation was laced with sexual double entendres. "You think you're clever?" she asked, tracing a finger along his chest. "I like clever, but I adore flustered. Makes things entertaining." He stumbled over his words, trying to match her wit, but only managed incoherent compliments that made her laugh, full and wicked, echoing against the palace walls. Comedic chaos ensued when he accidentally walked in on her adjusting her attire. She caught him with a raised eyebrow and a smirk. "Curiosity killed the cat, you know. But in your case, I'm considering letting it live, if you behave." His mind spiraled through possibilities, all equally inappropriate and embarrassing. Dark humor clawed at him. "I survived a cursed beast, now I'm surviving adult teasing and sexual tension simultaneously." As the day progressed, their interactions became a dangerous dance of flirtation and humiliation. She challenged him intellectually and physically, throwing playful tests at him with suggestive undertones. "Lift this," she commanded, handing him a ridiculously oversized goblet. "Don't spill. Or do, spilling shows character." His clumsy attempts were met with laughter and mock criticism, his dignity slowly melting under her hyper-aware, sexually charged scrutiny. Their banter was a weapon, each double entendre, every sarcastic comment a strike and parry. "Do you think you can handle me?" she asked at one point, finger brushing his jaw lightly. "Handle you?" he replied, trying to sound confident, voice trembling slightly. I suppose I'll try." She laughed, a melodic sound with a dark edge, and leaned in, letting him catch a hint of her perfume. "Try," she whispered, "is all I ask, for now." Even in private, she continued her playful dominance. She tested boundaries with casual touches, suggestive comments, and subtle physical closeness, forcing him to navigate adult humor and sexual tension simultaneously. Court rumors began to swirl, nobles whispering crude jokes about the taming exercises, adding an extra layer of humiliation he secretly enjoyed. Each challenge, each innuendo, every teasing glance brought them closer, both sexually and emotionally, in a dizzying, comedic ballet. By the evening, he realized he had adapted in some small way. He could match her wit in short bursts, and even manage a playful jab or two without collapsing into panic. Yet she remained in complete control, teasing, laughing, and occasionally testing him with adult double meanings that left him blushing and scrambling for a clever comeback. He understood, with a mixture of horror and delight, that his life had become a sexual comedy of wit, embarrassment, and slowly budding romance. Every interaction was a challenge, a flirtation, and a humiliation rolled into one, and he loved every ridiculous, erotic second of it. She had transformed physically, but more importantly, she had revealed her mind, sharp, dominant, and hilariously merciless. And he, hopelessly flustered, realized he was both prey and partner in the most adult, chaotic, and intoxicating dance of his life. The next morning, the king summoned them both with a grin that suggested he had the entertainment of the entire kingdom in his hands. "Show me the results of your partnership," he said, voice thick with amusement. The hero swallowed, realizing that the final test wasn't about bravery, strength, or wit. It was about surviving the princess at her absolute, unrelenting peak of charm, teasing, and sexualized mischief. She stepped forward, radiant, confident, and impossibly dangerous. "Ready?" she whispered, brushing her fingers across his shoulder in a deliberate, provocative touch. He nodded, voice tight, and attempted a smile that came out somewhere between nervous deer and hopeless schoolboy. "Ready," he repeated, though he had no idea what exactly he was ready for. The king clapped once. "Proceed." What followed could only be described as a public circus of adult comedy. She tested him with verbal challenges, riddles filled with double entendres, and sharp, sexually charged questions designed to fluster him spectacularly. "What do you do when a beast grows restless?" she asked, leaning close so only he could hear. I try to calm it," he stammered. Her laugh echoed across the hall, rich and wicked. "Oh, try? That's adorable. I like someone who appreciates subtlety, and fails deliciously." Every misstep he made became fodder for her teasing. A dropped goblet, an awkward bow, a stumble over his own words, they were all exploited with dark humor and sexual innuendo. She danced circles around him, physically and mentally, and he struggled to keep his thoughts from turning uncomfortably adult. The court murmured, some nobles laughing quietly, others whispering crude jokes about the hero's training techniques. He tried to regain composure, firing back a clever comment, only to have her counter with a witty retort that left him blushing and scrambling for an answer. "I can't believe I'm engaged in a verbal duel, and I'm losing to my gift," he muttered internally. She leaned closer, whispering, "Gift? Oh, darling, you're more like a toy, but an entertaining one. I could keep you around for fun, forever." As the test escalated, physical humor became entwined with adult tension. She pretended to trip him, only to use the motion to brush against him, letting him feel the full impact of her transformation and teasing nature. He gasped, trying not to melt into the floor, but she laughed, loud and victorious. "See?" she said. "Training is fun when both parties survive intact, and maybe a little aroused." The king watched, chuckling darkly. "I should have known giving you a human would lead to chaos." The princess winked at him, whispering, "He might be clumsy, but he tries. That counts sometimes." He felt a flush of pride and embarrassment that made his head spin. He realized he had survived the princess teasing, adult humor, and sexual traps without collapsing completely, though just barely. Finally, she stepped back, letting him catch his breath. "Not bad," she said, brushing hair from her shoulder, fingers grazing his chest in one final, suggestive touch. "You've proven somewhat competent. And maybe even worthy of my company." His brain short-circuited, heart hammering, ego bruised, yet delighted. He had tamed no beast, she had allowed him the illusion of control, and he liked it far too much. The court erupted in applause, whispers of crude commentary filling the air. He realized with a mixture of horror and satisfaction that his life had become a sexual comedy nightmare of wit, teasing, and adult adventure. She leaned in, voice low and playful. "I hope you enjoyed the training, because this is only the beginning. I bite in more ways than one, you know." He laughed nervously, imagining all the future chaos, humiliation, and pleasure that awaited. Somehow, he had survived a cursed, beastly princess, witnessed her transformation, navigated a minefield of sexual innuendos, and come out alive. More than alive, he was intrigued, aroused, and undeniably attached. As they walked away, her hand brushed his intentionally, a reminder that the adventure, an adult comedy, was far from over. The hero sighed, thinking, "I was gifted a beast, survived the chaos, and now I'm utterly, hilariously, and dangerously enchanted. What could possibly go wrong next?"